the 9 o'clock news. Jointly and separately, they both delighted and horrified the nation with their anarchic humour. Out of this combination of talent has emerged a young man who's been called Britain's greatest comedy hope since John Cleese. He's a strange mixture and an interesting psychological study. In real life, he's a farmer's son from Newcastle who is quiet to the point of being invisible. On stage, he often displays a kind of manic energy, which has led him to being described as this semi-lunatic, simmering psychopath.
Hurry up! He's so slow, isn't he? There's some poor twat stuck behind that bit of cardboard there trying to get on. While it's his life slipping away. While this grey-streaked, Russell-Harty clone down here trucked out his life story. It's pathetic. It's pathetic. Come on, let's get on. Come on. Let's get the bloody show on the road, for goodness sake. Come on. Who are we bloody waiting for, anyway?
Rowan Atkinson.
Rowan
Atkinson.
Ron, are you there, Ron? Come on, Ron, you all right? Come on. Come on. I'll tell you, Ron, come on, don't be shy. I'll tell you, if you don't do it, I'll do it. Right, stuff it, I'll do it.
Rowan Atkinson. What happened when you first tried that marvellously manic character out? Because that was on not the 9 o'clock news, wasn't it?
That's not the 9 o'clock news, yes. It was, I think, probably in this very studio.
Was it?
In this very studio that I first sat very nervous in the audience, because it's a very nerve-wracking thing to do, I can tell you, sit amongst those real people there, just to be about to perform. And I stood up, and I was in the middle of spouting, and this commissionaire came down from the back, who hadn't been told of the fact that some strange member of the public was going to stand up and shout at everyone. So he came up and he stood in front of me and said, "All right, son, all right, come on. Just come quietly." And I said, I'm on television. And he was facing me away from the camera, and this was all shown, actually, in the second edition of the first series, all this happening, and the camera was luckily facing me, so it wasn't facing him. And the look of realization on his face when he discovered that he actually was, his back at least, was on television, and the look of complete horror. And he just turned and disappeared.
When did you first start making people laugh? Because you came from a very unlikely background, actually, for a comic entertainer.
Yeah, there's no real show business heritage in my family at all. It's strange, except that my grandfather used to own cinemas and theatres in the northeast of England. But, so there wasn't any particular reason why I should have turned out the way I have. Except, I remember, I was about 11 and 12, I think, somewhere around there, that I remember standing up and doing some strange things in the school changing rooms that used to drag people down and have them laughing at me. And then the adolescent self-consciousness set in. And I never dared stand up in front of my friends and try and make them laugh again. And I've never done it to this day.
But what was it that made them laugh? Was it the facial expressions? Do you pull faces, do imitations?
I really can't remember. I don't think it was impressions of any kind. I think it must have just been some horrible apparition on my face.
But then, I mean, who were the influences on you in your career? Who were the people you've looked at and learned from?
I mean, as far as I'm aware, I've never consciously learnt from anyone or consciously copied anyone, as it were. It's all just drifted into the subconscious, and mainly, I suppose, Peter Sellers, undoubtedly, in terms of film. I think John Cleese is still the funniest man in Britain. That's flattery for you. And he undoubtedly, from about the age of 12 to 13 or so, has influenced me, I'm sure, a fantastic amount. And of course, all through his career, really, through I'm Sorry, I'll Read That Again, which was a radio show in the late 60s, you may remember. And then through, of course, Monty Python and all that.
Like John, of course, I mean, there's a great deal of your humour is very visual humour. You also observe people. Or do you observe people? I mean, or can you demonstrate how watching human behaviour, you can transfer that into humour.
It's just, yes, it's just the very ordinariness of life that I so like watching. I've never consciously, again, copied any individual. Characterizations that you tend to do tend to be based on people who you might have seen 10 years ago, but you can't remember for the life of you who they are. And they've just somehow, their mannerisms and things, and just the idea of people. I mean, it sounds like an old cliche derived from the cliche that, you know, truth is stranger than fiction, and actually just the way, you know, the person sitting opposite you on the train behaves, like a quick demonstration of a very ordinary, very inoffensive person doing nothing, but somehow being funny, aren't it? So he stands up, and he's standing up, and he sits down. It's just that kind of thing. It's strange.
Of course, one of the things about that kind of comedy, too, is in observing, breaking the cliche again of how people respond in certain situations. I mean, I know that you do one about drunkenness, don't you?
Right.
Which reverses what people normally think about.
Well, yes, it is a cliche about trying to act drunk, is that you feel as though you should act drunk, and actually they say that the key to it is to act sober, and just to try and be sober. And it's just the fact that everyone exaggerates everything to such an extent, and they're sitting there. And
Yes, you're right.
And it's just that you try and make things bigger all the time, and drunkenness is an example.
A lot of your humour, of course, has got this manic quality about it. One review I read of yours said that they found it slightly disturbing at the end of the evening. You know, they've been in the presence of this sort of lunatic on a stage, which is quite at odds, though, with the way you are. I mean, very quiet and almost shy.
Yes, I don't know. Yes.
I mean, but have you ever tried, I mean, is that part of you? Is that the dark side of the moon, or?
Yes, I never know. People say it must be because of some kind of repressed and strange childhood, but I can assure you I had a very normal, I had a very normal and caring and very good childhood, and I don't quite see, it's just something I find that I can do in a convincing way. I mean, a lot of people can just be very big in their expression and very extrovert in the way that they behave, but to do it so you believe in a character, if you like, I always try and do it within a character very much departed from my own, and provided it's character acting in a way, but it's extreme, but it must be just this side of surreality, if you like. Sounds dreadful, but you know, it must be believable.
Yes.
And if you like, I seem to have learned a way of being over the top but believable.
Yes. Yes. There's nothing in your background to suggest you were become a comedian, was there at all? I mean, why did you become a comedian?
I couldn't do anything else. Why did I become a comedian? Literally, I couldn't do anything else. I didn't have much education as a...
But did you loon around when you were a kid?
No, I was jumping in and out of air raid shelters because our house got bombed. We moved to Grandma. She got bombed. Auntie got bombed. My auntie's sister got bombed. My dad said, this is getting personal. Hitler versus the O'Connors. So I didn't really know. I just later on found that being a complaints clerk in a shoe factory, which is what I did, was not the greatest job in the world. And if it was my part of the interview, I would tell you some stories, but no, not just now. I found that it was the one thing that I could do was make people smile, you know, especially when I sang.
Yeah. What about the verbal side of your humour, Rowan? How much is... I know that you have a writing, you write a lot yourself, but how much, again, do you pick up from what you hear around you?
Quite a lot. Quite a lot. Again, based a lot on very ordinary situations. I remember once being in a post office about a year or so ago, and the man in front of me, we were in a queue, and the man in front of me went up to the hole in the glass and said, could I have 3 O-levels, please? Second-class stamps.
What was going on in his mind?
What was that man talking about?
But you had this meet...
I think that's awfully sad.
That's it.
But
He's obviously wanting to go to
you share in common with Sarah this thing about very rapidly going to the top. I mean, what, 2 years ago, you were unknown, and now you're a star, and people recognize you wherever you go.
Yes, right.
How difficult is it readjusting? Because I don't envy anybody who gets stardom at a young age. I really don't. I think it's very difficult to cope with.
Yes, it depends. People who... It is tricky. It is tricky. I think it's the people who it's... No, I'm not going to say.
Pretend I'm not here, perhaps.
Think of something to say. Yes, it's like I was in a hamburger joint in London a week or so ago, and in many ways it's because people expect, if you are well-known through television, they don't expect you to be in a hamburger joint. So, the girl who was serving me the hamburger, I was just taking it, and there was a girl working next to her. And she suddenly turned to the girl next to her, and I was literally 2 feet away, and she said very loudly, "Is this Rowan Atkinson?" And the other girl looked and said, "No." I said, "Oh, didn't think it was." And so they did it. And because all this is happening, this denial that you're who you are is happening so close to you.
Yes.
It's a very disarming thing. I mean, I think it's people... I mean, if people do know you and they come up and they say, you know, I like this that you do or that you do, that's fine and very flattering, provided it doesn't happen too often. But it's the people who shout at you from across the street. It's the, "Hey, give us a face, Rowan!" That's not so good.
What about your parents' reaction to your fame?
I think they're very happy. I mean, I did stop my career as an electrical engineer, which is what I did for 6 years at university. I think I stopped it at such a high degree of qualification. I mean, it's not that I ran away from school at the age of 16 to try and become a star. And I was a Master of Science in engineering and almost Don-like by the time I stopped to do it. So they were perfectly happy that I should try it. They had strange images of what people in show business were like, and how I think my mother in particular had this image of extremely flashy with moustaches that go like this and bow ties that go like that, and people who slip you money like that, and I've met remarkably few of those people.
Yes, that's right.
And that actually, I mean, most of the people that I've worked with and do work with on Not the 9 O'Clock News or whatever are actually just like me, just fairly normal guys.
Fairly.
Who, you know, who come from similar backgrounds.
What about you, Sarah, though? Did your parents disapprove of what happened to you, particularly in the early days in the film industry, where you were this sort of sensual woman, you know, on display all the
I remember
time?
The Servant, there was a preview of The Servant, and I didn't go to it, my parents did, of course, and they came round to my house afterwards and absolutely stormed in, absolutely furious. My mother was so upset. She said, "Darling, how could you?" Because I think it was the first time, actually, there'd been a naked breast on the screen, I think. Although it was very fleeting, it was, nevertheless, a very modest breast, I promise you. And my mother said, what am I going to do? How can I explain this at home? I mean, what will the servants say? I remember. And she was absolutely furious. And of course, the servants did, in fact, take it very badly until they left, because I came from a very, very fortunate upbringing. I mean, we were wealthy, which is not the thing to be. Oh, I do find also, don't you, that class is hanging us up dreadfully here. If you're upper class, you're talking like that, and if you're lower class, you're talking like that. I mean, we've all lost sight of our roots, haven't we?
Well, I don't know about that, not at all.
Not you, you're an exception.
I'm an exception, thank you.
You are an exception.
Yorkshire born, Yorkshire bred.
Yes,
right.
you are, actually. You kept that going
Strong
all
in
the
the
way
arm,
along.
thick in the head. Listen, what about, of course, talking about losing sight of your roots, you, of course, have done, like you have done, too, a Royal Command show, haven't you?
Oh, yes, right.
Yes.
Yes.
What was that like?
It was fun, actually. I mean, it was a whole new world for me, because it was the world of variety, and it's a world I didn't, at least until then, know a great deal about. And people who come up to you and say, what play-on music do you want, Rowan? And you think, play-on music? What is he talking about, play-on music? And of course, you forget that in variety shows, whenever someone comes on, there's music going like this, so I had to choose some piece. But the great thing about it, undoubtedly, was meeting a small section of the royal family in the form of the Queen Mother and Prince Charles.